Good afternoon. I'm Stephen Posner. I'm a PhD candidate at the Gund Institute, and I'm here to talk today about ecosystem services. These are the benefits that people receive from nature. And specifically, I'm interested in why knowledge about ecosystem services has some kind of policy impact. It's a convenient title for my talk because it's also my research question. This is a really important question because there are a lot of people right now who are generating knowledge about ecosystem services, trying to have a policy impact, but maybe not understanding why or how that kind of knowledge has an impact. So better understanding this question and answering it will help improve our ability to influence and improve policy. The answer, it turns out, is about 1,000 things can explain the policy impact, but I'm just going to talk about 3 today. And focusing on these 3, these are attributes of the ecosystem service knowledge, and it's a framework developed by Cash and Clark, the folks listed there at the bottom. First one being, if the knowledge is salient and perceived to be relevant to the needs of decision makers, then it's likely to have an impact. If the knowledge is credible, meaning that the scientific arguments are trustworthy and expert-based, it's also good for impact. Lastly, they point out that the legitimacy of the knowledge matters. How it's produced, if it's done so in an unbiased way, if it's perceived to take into account lots of different perspectives. And these are really about people's relationships with the knowledge, so it matters how the knowledge is perceived. And so with this framework and a pretty good research question, we developed this hypothesis, which makes sense. We said that more salient, credible, and legitimate ecosystem service knowledge would be associated with more policy impact. If we were to graph these 2 things, it would look something like that. And so now with this, I needed to do 3 things. First, I needed to be able to measure things like credibility and salience and legitimacy. And I did that with a survey that went directly to decision makers themselves. Second, I needed to be able to measure impact. And in order to do this, I focused in 2 areas. First one was impact in terms of the way the knowledge helped change perspectives. This is a subtle but critical part of the policy process. Conversations begin to shift, different kinds of language comes up in discussions, and so I wanted to measure this, and I also wanted to measure, at the end of the day, was there actually a change to a policy or a plan based on the ecosystem service knowledge? And I did this with experts who helped score different sites. So the last thing I needed to be able to do was to measure all these variables among different places so that I could compare. And this is the sample that I used, 15 international cases from the Natural Capital Project where ecosystem service science was done in a pretty similar way with the aim of influencing policy. And across all of these places, I measured each one as a data point with these variables of impact and salience and credibility and legitimacy. And what we found was that there is a pretty clear relationship here. Across the bottom, there's salience, credibility, and legitimacy. These are for the 2 different measures of impact. And the explanatory variables are binned into low, medium, and high categories. And there's a very clear relationship where more of these things leads to more, or is associated with more impact. This is the first time, to my knowledge, that these kinds of ideas have been tested in a quantitative way like this. So these were exciting results, but I also measured and tested about 5 times as many explanatory variables, things about the process of the science and policy happening, things about the contextual conditions of each of the sites. And I found, ultimately, that what explains policy impact in part are these attributes of the ecosystem service knowledge. So salience, credibility, and legitimacy matter, but other factors also matter a lot as well. And I'll leave you with that. There's a lot more to learn.